Hello everyone, it's time to do another deck profile, this time on the first of my deck profiles is set 13. A bit late, I know, but I got my stuff late, so that's why I'm doing this now. So this first one would be Nirvana Jheva, or the Stravairina deck, or the Blazing Heavenly, however you like to call it. Like usual, this deck is just going to be fun. It's updated based on, of course, the last stuff. And because of set 13 with the Blazing Heavenly stuff, this deck has actually changed quite a lot, erasing a lot of its old weaknesses of not getting pluses. Because the problem with Nirvana Jheva before was that you had to commit a lot to make one powerful unit. And most of the time, the payoff isn't really good. Deck building also was really hard because it requires two pieces to make one. So meaning you need at least three cards, and even with Jheva herself being able to get you some stuff back, it wasn't enough. But now with the new Blazing Heavenly stuff, it actually helped out so much, especially with Blazing Heavenly fused with Trickstar makes the new Stravairina. That's basically the lore of it. The support of the Blazing Heavenly really helps out a lot because that one is just another plus engine on top of your already plussing engine, and with those extra plus engine, it really helps out with the extra prayer dragons that the deck really needs. And of course, because of the Blazing Heavenly stuff, it did change the deck quite a bit, and overall for the better. Unfortunately for a lot of your old crossover Strarinas, a lot of them kind of just got thrown out because of that as well. But then again, this deck had the problem of basically resources and also piece reliant. But now with the set 13 with Stravairina and the Blaze Heavenly stuff, the payoff is at least now worth it, and the deck is actually pretty good. And that's basically my thoughts of the deck, other than the fact that it's still pretty cool and it's still an interesting concept, and you can technically Highlander the deck in a way, but I don't recommend it. But on that, let's get on with the deck profile. We of course start off with the Ride deck. Here's your starter, Surprise Egg, which goes to the grade 1, How Pounding Blaze Maiden Rito, which when the grade 2 Ryu rides on top of it, you call the Trickstar. Ignore the rearguard effect. In which we go to Ryu, where when you ride your Nirvana Jheva on top of it, you can look at top 7 cards for a Prayer Dragon. In which we go to Nirvana Jheva herself, which you can once per turn discard a card from your hand to call a Trickstar along with a Prayer Dragon from your drop zone, which is basically your recovery engine. With the second skill, when this card attacks, you can counter last one to choose one of your crossover dress rearguards to stand it, which is of course going to be very helpful because of course it's going to be multi-attack. As you can tell, Jheva herself doesn't get power compared to original Nirvana, which is another problem with this deck was the Vanguard attack was going to be weak, but because of Stravairina, it actually will fix that, and I'll show you why later. But overall, this is just meant for the deck, so of course you're just going to play it. In which we go to the main deck itself. First off, of course, 3 Jhevas for Persona riding. Unfortunately, we did not get a evolution of the Vanguard for set 13 for Jheva, but we did get rearguard evolution, as you saw from the spoiler earlier, which is Stravairina. So Stravairina, it's a cross OverDress unit that requires the Trickstar and 2 different named Prayer Dragons. Remember that, because this is the only cross OverDress unit that requires at least 2 different Prayer Dragons. And it says at least, so you can have multiple Prayer Dragons infused with this because it's going to relate to its last skill. But the first skill is that in the front row rearguard during your turn, while this card's in cross OverDress state, this card plus your Nirvana Vanguard gets plus 10k power, and it gets the ability of triple drive. This is going to be, of course, really good because not only now your Vanguard has pressure, it also has extra power that it needs. And this card itself gets power as well, which is of course going to be very powerful. But the second skill is basically an anime-like effect. But when this cross OverDress state unit is stood by your Vanguard's ability, aka Jheva's Restand, you can counterblast 1 to stand all its Talisman or Prayer Dragon rearguards, aka the Verinas, or it's basically Prayer Dragons. But if there's 5 units in its original dress, this is why the cross OverDress part requires you 1 Trickstar and at least 2 Prayer Dragons or more, because if you do more with, of course, 4 other Prayer Dragons, you can nuke your opponent's field along with their markers. And yeah, that's the anime-like effect, because having all the pieces together with the lore of it, with the 4 other pieces of the Blazing Heavenly cards, yeah, that's basically the anime type effect. But anyway, it's not too bad because not only that basically restands your board, but you have the added nuke effect if you want to actually do it, but most of the time you are really not going to do it, unless you're playing against a specific matchup. But it's really good for the fact of its first effect where it gives power to Vanguard and itself, along with giving your Vanguard extra pressure of the triple drive. It just really needs that, and that's why the payoff is actually pretty good, because triple drive Vanguard, and thanks to your Prayer Dragon support, it basically protects us as well. Yeah, this card actually helped make the deck despite how piece reliant it is. So that's it for the grade 3 lineup. Now for the grade 2 lineup, First off, we got the old Mirror's Verena, regular cross OverDress unit where it requires 1 Trickstar and 1 Prayer Dragon, and that's going to be all cross OverDress unit other than Stravairina. So first off, when placed in cross OverDress state, choose up to 2 Verenas in the drop zone and put them into its original dress. This is going to help out the second skill because when this card attacks in cross OverDress state, it gets plus 10k power in the end of the battle. Then you can put one of its original dress Verena to the drop zone, and then you can either draw a card or countercharge 1. Main reason is to countercharge, but the draw also really helps, which is why you have to run this as 4 of. And then to help you recycle, we got Briz Verena, which gets plus 5k power and 10k shield on both players' turn while in cross overdress state, and it cannot also be chosen by your opponent's card abilities, which is also very helpful. Hence, it's a defensive Verena. But the first skill is also very helpful because when placed by cross overdress, you choose 1 cross overdress ability card from your drop zone that is not itself and put it back to your hand, so meaning that your Verenas are now ditch fodder. So that's it for all my Verenas. Now, to the Prayer Dragons. First off, we got Aprachia, which when placed other from deck, you can Soul Blast 1 to discard a card from your hand to search your deck for 1 Prayer Dragon and call it to rearguard. You can always just use Jheva to recall this and then just get more plays, and that also being a Prayer Dragon, which is also going to give you a piece, which has the second skill where when it becomes an original dress, aka when you perform cross overdress with it, you can draw a card and then choose one of your outer dress unit, the cross overdress unit itself, and then until the end your opponent's next turn, it cannot be chosen by your opponent's card abilities. So here's a way to give your Verenas resist. That's why you run this. But you can't run 4, unfortunately, because you don't really have the space for it. But who knows, once we hit back the 50 card ruling, I might actually bump this up. And then for other Prayer Dragons, so I'm going to run one of Nandika, which has the skill of when it becomes original dress, you can Soul Blast 1, choose one of your outer dress units. It gets this ability where during the battle it attacked, it gets the battle door effect, which is pretty nice that you can give it to any of your Verenas. So of course, you just run this as a one-of because it's not very necessary. Also, it's blazing heavily, so it's going to be important for the name. And then we run 2 Trajas, which is basically a play extension where when placed on rearguard, if your Vanguard is Nirvana, you can counterblast 1, retire one of your other rearguards, search your deck or drop zone for up to 2 blazing heavily in their name and call them to rearguard as rest. And if you retired a cross overdress unit, you can draw a card as well. This is of course going to be helpful to extend plays, and the fact that this one doesn't need to be called by a specific way is also very nice. So you call your grade 2 calls the grade 1, and then grade 1 calls 2 more pieces. So that gives you 4 Prayer Dragons. In which, just for anime reasons, I decided to run the last of the Blazing Heavily card, Kamodok. When this card is in original dress, you choose the outer dress unit and then choose one of your opponent's Vanguards. It gets plus 2k power for each of the Vanguard's grade. So the Verena basically can beat down basically anything, but it's meant for Griffokila ideally, but I only play it just because of anime reasons. And then finally, Grimomir, because this is probably one of the best Prayer Dragons to run, where when it becomes original dress, you can Soul Blast 1 of the top 7 cards to choose up to 2 Verenas from among them. 1 goes to hand and 1 goes to drop. Basically, it searches up your pieces. And then, finally, 4 PGs, 1 being the Blitz Order. And then, the infamous Trickstar, which you have to run 4 copies of because everything starts with the Trickstar. And then finally, trigger lineup, the OT, 8 crits, 3 draws because you need the draw power, and the 4 heals. So that's it for my deck profile of my Stravairina deck. What do you guys think of it? I have to say, this is kind of fun, and I'm glad that Jheva finally got to be kind of relevant, even though it took basically the whole entire Will Dress season just to make Jheva relevant. But in that, I just have to say it's just cool and fun. Unfortunately, no evolution for Jheva herself, which I really kind of wish that it happened because everyone else kind of got their evolution with the Vanguard. But at least we got a unique evolution with the Rearguard, and it's a little more unique of a crossover dress unit, not requiring multiple Prayer Dragons, and overall it's just an awesome looking unit. But in that, I'm not going to really say this deck is absurdly good or anything, but at least that it's finally a threat. It gave Jheva finally what she needs after for so long of being like a punching bag, because lack of resources, Peace Reliant, and probably doesn't even know what it wants to be. Clad in Prayer looking at you, and I was hoping that Stravairina would relate to Clad in Prayer, but it didn't. So it was kind of unfortunate that a lot of those cards kind of just got thrown away, especially all the other crossover dress units that we kind of had to throw away because of this new set. set, focusing on the blazing heavily. But in that, I don't really regret it, and I have fun with this. And go ahead and tell me what other cards would you recommend for the deck. It's kind of tight with space, but with set 13 out, and then soon we're going to go to a new series or a new cast, we're going to have that new 50 card main deck ruling, which now we have a little more space to add some stuff, which we might increase some extra copies of specific cards. But in that, it's not going to be much changes. And now it's time to say goodbye.